Hey there, welcome back to the channel. I'm Derek. This is Chocolate City Tech. Um, as usual, if this is your first time, welcome. Click the subscribe button, like, share, help the channel grow. So today what we're going to be doing is I'm going to cover a topic that sort of doesn't get covered a lot, at least on YouTube anyway. I don't really see a lot of videos covering it. Usually everything is all brand new, right? NPM install this, NPM install that, and you start a greenfield project. But that's not the reality. A lot of times, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be maintaining a lot of legacy code. So today, what I'm going to cover is how to sprinkle a little bit of React.Js. One of the easiest ways to sprinkle React.Js in a legacy code. Not React, and I would say Vue and even Svelte.js are probably good for something like this. Most likely, I wouldn't use Angular for this method. Angular is really good for, a greenfield project where you can start something fresh and, there's no dependencies on, you're not injected into little pages here and there. React is really good for something like this where you have a massive amount of, a legacy code, web front end, and you just can't afford to replace everything at once, which is where Angular would be good for, in my opinion. But here you need to have, let's say just the contact page be a little more interactive than what it used to be. Really smaller pages, you can start injecting these into them until, maybe you and your team get to the stage where you can sort of fully commit to, either React itself or something else. But anyway, so what I have here is I have a GitHub repo that has the code because doing this live is going to take a lot of time. Well, it shouldn't take that much longer. It should be maybe an hour, 2 hours if this is your first time doing it. But so what I'm going to do is we're going to cover this. I'm going to take you through the steps of building something like this. We're going to run it. And the last thing we're going to do is one more thing that I haven't done yet, which is to uglify the JS code. So let's go ahead and jump into the code. I'll explain how this, how you set something like this up. And to me, this is one of the easiest ways to, again, integrate React.Js into an existing legacy code. Of course, we're using .NET framework, which is the old framework, not to be confused with the current .NET. So confusing. But with that being said, this is the older framework. So the reason I use that is because if you're talking legacy, most likely that's what you have, not .NET Core, unless maybe you're looking at 1.0 or something. But likely this is what people will consider .NET, legacy code. So let's jump into Visual Studio. I have the code already downloaded, so let's go take a look at it. All right, so here we are. Now I'm using .NET. Obviously, you don't have to be using .NET to make this work. This could be some old PHP Symfony project. Hopefully, the front end is not a PHP mixing with, HTML, but instead just some controllers and some views. If you have that kind of format, then this is going to work just fine. This can also be a Node.js, all right, where maybe you have Happy.js as the back end. Although, would that even be legacy? That should be like 5 years old or something. But anyway, yeah. So it doesn't really matter what it is. What we're looking to do is be able to find ourselves in a position where we can sort of inject some of this code. So the first thing we're going to do is let me just run the project so you can see what it looks like. And it's not going to be much because it itself is not important. Because once you sort of see what it looks like, the rest just falls into place. All right, so what we have here is a typical MVC application. If you were to create a .NET 4.7-ish MVC application, this is what you get, right? You get something that looks like this. Is the sort of the default application they used to give you right off the bat. Now what you'll notice is that when I click application name, there's a post back. When I click home, there's a post back. The only reason why you don't really see much difference because it's just it's using the same view. But when I click an about page, there is a post back. When I click a contact page, there's a post back. When I click a blogs page, once again, there's a post back. all I'm really saying here is that each individual page is still its own view. So it's still its own view server-side rendered application, just like you will have with any typical MVC application. However, you will notice that these pages, or you may not yet, these pages are actually React pages. So when I go into an about page, that's actually a React page. When I go into a contact page, that's actually a React page. So this is how you can sort of seamlessly inject your, I don't know, use the word inject, but that's how you can sort of seamlessly add React or again Vue.js or Svelte.js into an existing, what do you call it, an existing legacy code. And it's, for the most part, to me, it's one of the easiest way to go. It may not be the best. Ideally, I think nowadays, if you want to design something, a greenfield project, project from fresh, you want to have your web API one place and you want to have your front end in the other place. It makes sort of, or not sort of, it makes deployment and making code change that much easier. But the reality is, if you already had to have a monolith and all you're trying to do is just add a little bit of interactivity to some of the pages, this is definitely one of the best ways to go. So while we're here on the blogs page, you will realize that if I click one, it actually goes to blog one, right? What that means is that it's actually, going to, it's actually routing. So even with inside here, I can still have React render separate pages as well, which I think is pretty cool. So if I click on two, as you can see here, it's just getting some dummy data I have in the back end. But what that says is that I'm actually routing here as well. So not only am I routing in MVC, but I can also route individually here. So it is possible to land on this blogs page and have different things, be rendered to different pages. Now, I wouldn't want to, I think it would be confusing to your user though, if you came to blogs and then all of a sudden everything picked off as a single page application. Unless of course you're gonna go ahead and do a single page app. Then in that case, you don't really need what I'm doing here. This is more for the scenario where you really need to change a few pages or just start off to try to test to see if this is going to be the way to go. All right. So with that being said, let's jump into the code. Let me show you how something like this can be done. All right. So here we are. We are back in Visual Studio. Let's first start off with the things that you're going to need. So when you go ahead and create a brand new Visual Studio. For you, you're not, because presumably you already have the legacy code and all you're doing is looking to add this feature or this functionality. All right. All you really need is you're going to, at the root level here, just create a npm init file, or do npm init, which is going to give you a package.json. Don't confuse that with packages.config. That's .NET's thing, package manager. So what you need is package.json. And what we're going to need here is we're going to need the things that we basically need, right? We're going to be using webpack. That's how we're going to be able to do the stuff that we're doing. I have the GitHub, so I'm not going to go over each individual pieces here because I'm not about to type in all of these things. But these are the things that you're going to need. So we're going to need Babel. We're going to need, that's going to be transpiling our React RVC.JSX, right? Obviously, we're going to need Webpack itself. We're going to need some CSS loaders to help us with CSS. Because I also use Sass in this project as well, and I'll show you how that's working. Bringing in Sass and of course Sass loaders and things of that nature. And once again, of course, the Webpack and Webpack client itself. I'm using Webpack merge so that I can actually have different environments, and I'll show you how that is supposed to be working. So get all your dependencies installed. One other magical piece that you're going to need to actually make this whole thing work is you're also going to need a babel.rc file. So just in the same folder that you have your package.json, also create a babel.rc, and here you can put in all the things that you need. And for our scenario, since we're doing React, we need a Babel React and presets and stuff like that. And any other additional plugins that you may want, you can check out the plugin section here. And look for stuff that you think you might want and just add them as well. So we've installed Webpack at this point. We create 3, or you can create as many as you want. Typically what I do is I create one for production environment, one for the dev, and one that's common to all of them. And that's what, this is what's gonna make essentially all the magic. So let's start with the common, because the common is the one that they all share regardless of which environment you're in. So in the common project is where I bootstrap all my apps. So essentially each of these represents a separate application. So we have the blog application that you just saw. There was the contact page application that you saw as well. And as you can see here, what it's doing is we're going to the path where the source folder is. So in this case, we have a blog, we have so there's a contact application, and make note of the name I'm giving here. There's a blog and there's a common. And what the common really is, and the reason why there's a common is because what I like to do is I like to create 2 separate types of bundles. One bundle that is filled with the vendor stuff, and the other bundle that's going to be filled with my stuff. And what I'm doing is I'm actually creating chunks. So as you can see here, everything that I consider to be common, these are the custom code that I'm creating. Those things are going to be here. So these are things that my app is going to share, right? So obviously this is just says hello, and the other one says hello 2 and hello 3 and so on, hello 1. So if we take a quick look here, right? So each of these is a separate entry, right? And I'm going to show you in the code the views where these are being picked up from. So if we look in here, we'll see that there's a blog app, there's a common app, there's a contacts app. When when Webpack outputs these, they're going to output them in the same name. So home is going to end up being home.js because that's the name I give it here. And the destination is going to be in this distribution section, dist folder, right? When it outputs common, it's going to be common.js. When it outputs contact app, is going to be contact app.js, and so on and so forth, right? So that's how they get outputted. The dev really is really more of a place where, since I'm doing development locally, I don't want my code uglified. I don't want my code minified. I want my source code to look as basically just like my build source, so that I can take a look at it, see it, debug it easily. But of course, once you go to deploy, you no longer need that, right? You need it to be minified as small as possible. In our production here, same thing. And as I mentioned in the beginning, there's one more thing that's not done here, and the code currently isn't it's not uglified, so we're going to be doing that later. Or maybe I'll leave that as an assignment for you. All you need to do is add the uglify extension here, and that plugin here, I should say. Excuse me, the plugin here, and you should be good to go. So where are these things getting outputted? So in terms of the .NET framework, and it's very similar to a lot of different MVCs. There's going to be a corresponding views folder, and that folder corresponds to like the individual controllers. So there's a home controller here. If you go to home controller, the home controller bootstraps those individual pages. So when you go to home controller / it brings you the index page. When you go to the about page, home, the URL / about, it brings you to the about. When you go to URL / contact, it brings you to the contact page. When you go to URL blog, it brings you to the blog page, right? Simple enough. And the way it works is that each one is bringing up a views. And again, if you're not familiar with .NET frameworks MVC, you can probably sort of make it out. It's really easy. It's very similar to Laravel, the way that Laravel does it. Obviously, MVC was doing it before Laravel, but regardless. So let's say, for instance, I want to go to the corresponding blog view. Now, I already know it's right here. I can go to it, but one of the things I love about Visual Studio is how nice it is to navigate around certain things. So go to view. Right. it brings me to the view. And here is the magic, the part that ties everything in. So when I come to the views folder, that basically means that when I go to, let me show you the browser version here. That means that when I go to blog, right? I realize that's blog, but when I go to home/blog, right? Because that's what we, home controller blog, what it's doing is bringing me here. And when it brings me to this page, what happens is on this page, there is really nothing here, right? All that's here is this, right? All that's here is this MVC application that bootstraps. And what that's doing is it's saying that, hey, render this script. This script comes from the client. It comes from, it's in the this folder, and it's called the blog app.js right here, blog.app.js, which is what we just talked about, right? In a common file. So once again, so let me bring that back in case I lost you somehow. So we have a configuration. A configuration says that my entry point is the source folder, and the name of the app, I want to call it blog app. It is located in the source folder, blog, right? And that's the name of the blog, and that's the name of the app. This is the actual app. There's really nothing fancy about the app. I'm not really going to go too much into it because I assume if you're watching this, you already sort of know React already. All this is just a very simple blog, right? App, I should say, and it's simply just a React function blog, start a blog. We add in a React router. This is another part of what I wanted to show, is that when you get to that blog page, we are also routing to individual pages, right? Blogs, we are routing to individual pages. So you can go to route 1. I probably should have put a link here so I don't have to keep clicking backwards, but you get the idea. Blog 2, and so on and so forth, right? And that's what that is, right? So when I go, it renders a blog detail, which as you can see, I put the detail here. I didn't have to put, I could have put everything here just for simplicity's sake. But the route we using hash router. Now, typically I don't like using hash router. I just like using the regular router, which, doesn't put the hash. But I think whenever you're working with a legacy framework, it makes it easier to see that this isn't part of our typical application, right? This is a client. This is potentially a single page app that's living here. I think for me, it's a lot more clear when you see it that way. So that's why I tend to do it that way. So with that being said, so what you have here is, we have hash router that encapsulates the blog app, or wraps the blog app, and the blog list. We have the app, the list, that list, that's the main page of the blog, which, does API calls and stuff like that and passes in the URL. Might as well just go into it just so you can see. Again, this isn't really meant to be a deep dive in React because the assumption is you already know how to do all this. My work here is to sort of help you know how to tie it in. So the ideal way of tying this stuff in is you can have your main page, something like this. If your main page is a page that happens to have a need for API calls, here's an example, right? So an example here is the detail page itself. When the detail page is bootstrapped, it looks for the ID that was passed in from the list, right? Which is here. All right, so here's our list page. We also bring in the SAS. So again, you can have all this stuff working. The blog post is really just goes to the API. And again, you can bring in Axios. I didn't have to bring in Axios. I could have just used the fetch API. The reason I brought in Axios is just to let you know that you can do pretty much everything that you normally would do if you were working on the application separately, right? You can still do that here. So brings in, goes to get the API, goes to API, blogs, and then sets the blog. So where's our API? Well, API is in a controller. What I like to do is when I'm working on the MVC project, I like to have a separate folder for my API. So create a folder here called API controllers, of course. And as you can see, it's blogs, and it really doesn't do anything except bring, let me widen that a little bit for you. All it does is just bring home, bring up a few blogs. Nothing really special about that part. And if you know MVC and Web APIs, you already know how that whole thing piece works, right? So that's really all it is. It's an async function, so call a run sync, and set your blogs, and that's pretty much it. And as you can see, we are using React Router here, a link to the ID. In a sense, once you click that, that's what's bringing you here. Click, link here, link to 4, and as you can see, it's going back and getting the content, right? It's actually going to an API call, getting all the content that you need. Very, very simple. I realize if you haven't dealt with a lot of webpack, it can seem intimidating, and it's like, what do I add, when, where, to make this all piece fit together. So we have our blogs, we have our API, we have our pages, and that's all it is. And as you can see, all you need is to inject your app so that whenever you land on that individual page, your React takes over, and from here on, it can take care of the routing. The last piece that I probably want to cover is this layout. What you want to do for your own benefit is to make sure that you create a separate layout on which you put all your React pages. That just simplifies things for you. And the reason why you do that is because you can then put in some of the common things that you need. So as you can see here, we are rendering several scripts here. We are rendering the vendors script, which was being created in the comments here. Right, this is our vendors script. We are also rendering our own common stuff that we need, right? And all the layouts are going to share the same stuff, so that we don't need to bootstrap them individually. And that's pretty much it. Honestly, in the beginning, it might seem tough, but this is all the things you need to get this going. If you have any questions, drop some stuff in there in the comment section. I'll try to help out, but this is, to me, one of the easiest ways to get going with adding the sprinkling React in your applications in individual places. The last thing I said I was going to do is add in something that hasn't been added yet, which is to add an uglify. So let's go ahead and do that. So npm install -- save uglify. So we come back to our terminal. All right, so if you come back to our terminal here, we're gonna install this piece. Wait for that to install. Nice. Go back to our production version, and as you can see here, I've added optimization, minimizer, uglify, and of course, before you actually use it, you want to bring that in. So, and in case you're wondering where I'm getting this from, let me bring that up. This is part of this piece, and simply all you do is just what I did: npm install it, require it. Might as well actually just copy that and replace this with that piece. And so this is in here. Save this piece. So let me go over the best workflow for this. So running the application, you just run it like you run any other .NET MVC application. Just run it, launch it, running the client app. Now, me personally, and I'm gonna show you like the two ways. So if this is your first time running the app, obviously npm install, right? That goes without saying. So there are two options. You can download what is called the npm task runner for VS Code, and what that would do is you can put in some certain configurations that allows you to run certain things. So let me show you, for instance, what you can do here is that if we go take a look at, go back to solution, And let's go look at npm package JSON. Excuse me. This VS binding here, you see how it says project open? Well, what that would do is if you install that package I just showed you, the npm task runner, as soon as you open the project, it can actually run a particular script. And in this case, it can run the dev script or the prod script or whatever script you want, right? And so that's really, really good. And there are different commands that you can give here. So take a look at that project. It's pretty slick. Also, you can give you like a visual of how, to run individual scripts, so you don't have to run them by command line, which you can obviously do here. If I already haven't explained this part, the scripts part is really simple. It's just how you run any other script. The only exception here is that we are pointing webpack to a specific configuration for dev, for prod. So depending on how you do your deployments, if you have a task inside of your CI/CD that says run npm, this is where you'll be doing that, right? You'll be doing your npm install, and then immediately after that, you can run that particular script. So that's that. For so yeah, you can do that, or you can just run the script. So the ideal workflow. So I prefer to do all my C# stuff, or my C# things inside Visual Studio because it's just that great, right? And then I prefer to do all my client side, whether it's JavaScript, I shouldn't say all client side because Python, it's not client side, but Python, PHP, whatever else I'm doing, Go, whatever. The rest I prefer to do in VS Code because I like the support in VS Code better. There's a whole bunch of extensions and things you can play with. So yeah, so that's that. So how does the React app work? We already went through that. It works just like any other React app. The entry point, as I mentioned, is inside the common config, and that's where you want to put all your entry points. You can use individual routing, as I showed you. So each individual page can actually be its own route and can have its own React router, do whatever else you want to do. Have Axios call your backend, or just use Fetch API. You don't have to use Axios. I do like Axios though, however, because of the support for things like interceptors and stuff like that is good. MVC routing works the same way that MVC route does. You go to home/blog, it will give you that. If you go to home with nothing else, it just goes to the the initial page of the application or your index page or whatever. And also one thing I should mention, because this is a concern that I heard from people, is that when I'm running this, I'm literally running. In fact, let me go to the application real quick, bring this up, see. So one of the concerns that you may have is, all right, so I'm developing this. Do I have to tell so let me go back. So one of the concerns that you may have, right? One of the concerns you may have as well, if I go into the blog view, right? Blog, and I'm not using this, so I could probably just delete that, but don't worry about it. So if I go into the blog view, what it's doing is it's taking this, and it is which is being outputted by webpack into this folder. So your concern might be, well, does that mean that every time I need to get the latest, I have to build to get it? In a sense, yes, but you don't have to do anything manually, because if you look into our dev version here, you see that we have watch turned on. What that means is that when I run the dev version of this, and let me cd back real quick, npm run dev, it's going to build this. That was pretty fast. And it is in watch mode. That means that whatever change I make is going to be reflected. So this is very, very similar to how you normally would do if you were doing create React app or something like that. The only thing I haven't added in this one, and you can do on your own as an exercise For the surface, you can add in browserify, so that you can, auto load the page. But aside from that, that's it. You should be good to go. So if you have any questions, let me know. This is a little bit longer than usual because there's a lot of stuff that I think is packed in here, and getting started with uh, integrating these two is not always the easiest thing. But hopefully this helped out. If you have any questions, drop it. Drop a comment in there. I can get back. Ask me questions on Twitter, one of those social media places. So I always say, I may not be talking a lot, but I'm listening. So, all right, see you.